The assessment process is a very simple formula. For every single block product, there would be an assessment of 1 penny that would be paid by the producers for that. So in terms of the products, we do have some definitions in place that describe what a concrete block is. There's other masonry and other concrete products that could be manufactured on a block machine that are not covered by this program. This is specifically a concrete masonry check-off assessment program. So we have some definitions that would apply to help and understand which products would be included in the assessment process. The first question, or one of the questions that we frequently hear as we're talking through the process, is that we have to be careful, especially at this particular time in the economic state of the United States and elsewhere around the world. We've got to be careful that we do not adversely affect the competitive position of concrete masonry in the marketplace. So in terms of looking at the impact of what this penny a block may have, you know, the block itself is going to have some cost in terms of the overall cost of a total wall system. From a labor standpoint, it may be $5 or so to place each individual unit in the wall. And so the labor cost is much greater than what the cost of the unit itself is. And then there's other costs that go into the final installed price of the wall system. That could be the cost of mortar, of grout. It could be overhead associated with managing the installation process. So when you look at a penny a block, we're looking at something in the magnitude of 0.1% of the overall cost of the wall. And so the question that we have to ask ourselves is, does this adversely affect our competitive position? And I'm not sure that 0.1% is the issue that's going to make the decision on whether or not to choose concrete masonry or something else. Okay, so if we're at a penny a block, the question is how much resources does that provide to our industry to support the promotion, education, and research that we're planning for this program. And so, you know, currently right now we're under 1 billion block, you know, sold in the United States. So if we were at 1 billion block that are being produced and sold, then that would generate $10 million annually to support this research, education, and promotion. Now, as the market grows, we have the opportunity to grow that number. But that helps you understand in terms of some of these other programs where we're looking at as a starting point. We have some options of increasing the assessments down the line if it demonstrates that the programs are successful in increasing market share. The question that we got is, who pays the penny? Okay? Now, the legal obligation is truly on the block producer to contribute and submit the assessments on every single block that is sold within the United States. Okay? So that's the actual responsibility is on the block producer to remit that on a quarterly basis into the check-off program. Okay? So there is a mandate that we are putting into place for the program that would require that the producer show this assessment directly on every invoice so that it's clearly identified that the check-off program has an assessment that is associated with the cost of that product. So, you know, but the question is, you know, in terms of the penny, this would be paid by the block producers. But this is not just a producer program. This is an industry program. What we're looking at doing is growing market share. So that means that what we're working to do is to collaborate with all of the partners within the industry. Because if the producers are benefiting, the contractors are benefiting, and everybody else that's involved in the process is benefiting. We've got a phrase down here, CM Prep. What we're envisioning is that this term would show up on the invoice to identify that this is a concrete masonry products research, education, and promotion program. Okay, so the question is kind of what happens to the pennies? So now that we have a collection of resources to be able to do our promotion, education, and research, so the next question is what happens to that? Well, the first thing is that we have a limit that we have imposed on the amount of dollars that could go to support administration for the program. What we're envisioning is a very thin administrative process. What we're focusing on is to get the dollars out to where they can be utilized for those who are doing the research, education, and promotion. And so there's a cap on that of 10%. Now, that leaves 90% at a minimum to go to support programs. So of those, we've got an initial target that half of that would be intended for evaluating the opportunities at the national and the regional level to support programs that are common to all producers. And then the other opportunity is a target for having the other 50% of those program resources to go back directly to support initiatives that are at the regional, state, or local programs. So the entire impact here is intended to influence the actual market sales within the regions and into those markets that the actual producers are selling. This just sets up an initial process in terms of how we go through that identification process. So you see the lines are blurred there a little bit with overlapping circles because there's opportunities to change this depending on where we collectively determine is the best opportunity to have the greatest impact for sales in those local regions. Okay, so in terms of the direction of the pennies, who directs the pennies themselves? Okay, so in terms of roles, relationships, and responsibilities, the ultimate responsibility here lies with the national board. So the national board would be nominated by the industry itself. The board is actually appointed by the secretary of an oversight agency. That's how they have some of their influence into the process. But they can only select those board representatives from nominations that initiate from the industry. Okay? So the board has the ultimate responsibility. Now, reporting to the board would be regional advisory committees. And these regional advisory committees are working with producers and state associations within that particular region to discuss and coordinate what the best possible programs are to support the development of masonry within that region. And so those would report up through the national board. The chairman of each of these regional advisory committees are represented on the national board itself. It'll be a small board of 21 producers. 15 of those, 3 from each region, are represented there on the national board. The other 6 are made up of at-large producers that are intended to ensure that we've got a good representation of the cross-section of the industry. So we want to make sure that small producers have an active voice in the program. We want to make sure that medium-sized and large producers have an active voice in the program. So that's what the remaining balance would be of the board. So in terms of our process of getting the program implemented, there's really 4 steps. We are in the process of completing step 1, and we have entered into step 2. So the first step is that we need to evaluate industry support. So what this town hall meeting is about is to continue our education process. We want people to understand as much as they can possibly understand about how this program would work. We want them talking about how it could benefit them and what issues we need to continue to address before we get to final implementation stage. The second part of the process is that we have to get legislation to approve this program. All the programs that Major referred to earlier, and a number of these programs that Wayne and others have helped already put together, we're following their model. And so we need to get Congress to pass legislation that would enable us as an industry to conduct this program the way that we would like to do it. We get the ultimate control in this process. Ours is step 1, ours is step 4. And so we are the ones who are proposing what goes into that legislation process. The next part is once a bill is passed through Congress, we're hoping to accomplish that this summer. Once that's passed, then the process moves over to an oversight agency. The role of the oversight agency is just to make sure that we, as a national board that's overseeing the process, is doing it in conjunction with the regulations that were put forward in the legislation process. So the agency will develop an order that goes into more specific details about how the program would run. It would go through a review period, a comment period, so everybody would have the opportunity to comment on that agency order. Following that, there would be a final order that's drafted. That is the order that would then be submitted out to the industry for a final vote of the industry. So we are the ones that initiated the process as the industry. we are the ones that have ultimate say once we see exactly how the program is lined out in terms of that industry referendum.